I'm Jen Bosworth Ramirez.
And I'm Gina Polici.
We went to theater school together. We survived it, but we didn't quite understand it.
20 years later, we're digging deep, talking to our guests about their experiences and trying to make sense of it all.
We survived theater school, and you will too. Are we famous yet?
So they concocted this plan to make a shelf in our library, like right above the door frame that goes all the way around the room. So
are you kidding me?
I am not kidding you. So
I need pictures, and you gotta put them on the website. Okay.
So here's the deal, though. My son, my middle child, is so smart. He has never helped us with these type of projects before because he doesn't really like. He traditionally hasn't really liked working with his hands. But this time he wanted to, it was really his idea. He wanted to do it. And he's such a math brain that he insisted on doing heavy pre-planning. Like he made a model, he's calling it a model. It's not really a model. It's just like on a piece of paper. He drew plans for it. He did all kinds of measurements. He used, it was great. And he goes, listen, if we don't plan it out like this, then we get halfway through and we run into a snag and then we stop working on it, which is exactly what the oldest one and I have done on a number of projects, including building a full-size playhouse on our back. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. I spent thousands of dollars on wood and nails and power tools so that we could have this joint project of building a playhouse. And we didn't think it through one single bit. We found some plans on the internet and we went through and we made it. We got all the way to the roof. And the roof is what did us in. We couldn't get up high enough on the thing. We didn't have a high enough ladder and it's not in a great enough position. We couldn't put the roof on. It sat there for a year and then it was time for the bar mitzvah, which we were having the party at our house. So we had to take the whole thing down and we never finished. So the other one goes, listen, I don't want to do that. I don't want to go through all this work and give it up. So he planned it. And boy, did he plan it within an inch of his life. And it's going up and it's looking great. And I will send you pictures of when it's all said and done.
Oh my gosh. Merry Christmas.
It's
Merry freaking Christmas.
Absolutely.
That's fantastic.
I have one other cute little story to tell you.
I told C's hummus story to Sasha and Chrissy and Tilly.
Oh, how are they?
We saw them from afar. We saw them outside. They are amazing, and they laughed so hard. Hummus. It was, So for people that don't know, I mean, I probably made you tell it like 4 times, but my version, this is how I tell it, is that your daughter says, Mom, what kind of stuff do they have to eat in prison? Do they have like bad food? And you're like, yeah, it's probably not that great. She goes, like hummus. They cracked up. Anyway,
she's hilarious. So I was sick yesterday, and she came home from the bus. Oh, earlier in the day, I was taking her to school, and this little girl had these really cute boots on. These little, there's some UGG type boots. She's like, oh, I love those boots. And she had said something to me about it before. And I said, yeah, I looked for those, but I couldn't, I don't see where they are. I can't find any of the information for it. So she comes home yesterday. Oh, this is so sweet. She brings me a plate with sliced up bananas, something else, and the little container of yogurt that she got in her lunch that she brought home, because this is kind of sugary yogurt that I never buy for her, Trix yogurt. And she covered it in saran wrap. And she wrote me a get well note. And it's a picture of the two of us. And it said, Mom, get well soon. I love you. And then it says at the bottom, turn over. Turn to the other side. She goes, I got the information about the boots.
I'm telling you, she's genius.
She writes, you can get them at COL, that's Kohl's, or you could get them at Kohl's or TRGIT. Get it, Target.
She's genius.
And she followed up this morning. She goes, "So did you check out Kohl's?" She's hilarious.
She's like, "Hey, let me run this by you."
I'll run something by you then. Okay. We've moved a lot. I mean, not as much as you, but we've moved a lot in the time that we've been together, 20 whatever years. We probably moved, I don't know, 15 times. Or maybe less than that, but between 10 and 15 times. And one of the things that we lug around from place to place is a lot of mementos. A box of mementos turned into 2 boxes, turned into 2 boxes each. Now we have kids, they have their boxes. So we're at the point where, not only because of this, for other reasons, but we have to store all the mementos in a storage facility. This is the dumbest possible thing. I mean, it also has furniture from...
Oh, okay.
It has furniture, but anyway, we store boxes and boxes. Probably those plastic tubs, the big plastic tubs, we probably have 6 plastic tubs that are of mementos.
Wow.
Aaron has, the little plaque he got when he won a tennis tournament in 8th grade. It's yes. Like a lot of things, okay?
Yes.
I've gotten better at paring things down, but then when you have kids, you feel like you shouldn't throw anything away because they're the ones who are going to be going through your stuff one day and who are going to be mad if you didn't save all of their stuff. Now, of course, you cannot save all of their stuff, but what's your stance on mementos? What do you keep? What do you toss? Do you feel guilty about it, etc.?
That's a great topic. I feel mixed. Yes, we've moved so much and we too have mementos. There's the Marie Kondo, that if it doesn't spark joy, but I don't really believe that. I think people should do what they want to do on the most part. I don't subscribe to a minimalist thing, but I definitely feel like for everything you keep, you should throw out one thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that goes with clothes, and it is really hard. Now, mementos are different because they have sentimental value, but I'm remembering having to go through both dead parents stuff, and most of it is garbage. Most of it is like a lighter that my dad had that, was engraved with someone's initials that weren't his. Why? He probably stole it from somebody. But I was like, what? No. And it was a tremendous amount of emotional work to go through this stuff. And, yeah, I say get rid of most of it. I get rid of most of it.
I mean, I think what it's about is, because what I did with my dad is, so when he died, is right before I got married, and he didn't know that I got married or about any of my kids. So I think I really held on to stuff for kind of a long time because it just felt like I didn't have time to grieve or process or whatever it is. So there are certain things that you have your stages, like things you get rid of. Like when Aaron's dad died, he came home wearing all of his father's clothes.
Yeah.
He had and they were all too big.
Yeah.
His pants and his shoes. Well, that stuff has it's been about a year. That stuff is starting to go away. So I remember the phases of getting rid of stuff. And it is something about you hold on to the stuff is like a placeholder for you doing your grieving. So it's like the more you do the work of going through the grieving, then you feel okay to get rid of the stuff. And the thing about with the kids is I know something that they don't know, which is that what feels so precious to them now is not going to feel so precious to them. For example, when they go to college or move out, and I say, we need to go through this stuff now. We need to go through and figure out, what you want. And I'm sure that they're going to want to get rid of a lot of stuff. But they also want to keep, like, both boys did Taekwondo and went through their black belt. And the trophy for a black belt is like as tall as a person. It's like 5 feet tall. Those are in storage. We went to storage to get out the Christmas stuff. And my oldest son, he picks up, he goes, this thing was really like a piece of junk. Like, it's, because trophies are just made of plastic.
And cheap metal.
Yeah. So that was like, okay, you're going to want to get rid of this. That's a good thing. But with the smaller things, like really precious sentimental notes.
Oh,
I feel like keeping, but listen, not every kid or not every person writes a card that's worth keeping. I'm sorry to say, but
right. And what you don't, and I think what you're doing is by getting rid of some stuff is what you're actually doing is making your kids' job easier when we all croak. So if you think about it that way, like but they should be allowed maybe one tub each.
Right. And we should have to, when it gets, no. Well, they only have one tub, but then they have things like the trophies or the other things that they don't want to get rid of. Yeah. I'm feeling like what we should do is a annual, or at least every few years, going through, making sure that this is still stuff, because it was only recently that the older two wanted to get rid of their schoolwork from kindergarten.
Wow.
Like, yeah, they really wanted to. And that's the other thing is, like, if it is serving some emotional need,
you don't want to cut it off.
I don't want to cut it off, but I also don't want to. I know how it is with the whole storage facility. We got a storage facility that's bigger than what we need. We're just going to fill it up like a goldfish eating too much and filling up its bowl.
And then their stomach explodes. But I was going to say something that you might do too is, if you're into any kind of ritual, is Miles will burn. We will burn stuff in a like a goodbye stuff, like if it's sentimental letters and stuff. Now, there's not burning a kindergarten paper on, aardvarks. But if there's anything, have some kind of ritual saying goodbye situation. My sister and I, oh my gosh, when we went through the attic, there was a 10-year period where everyone died, right? And so we had 10 people's ashes. I'm not kidding you. My mother, my father, both 3 grandparents, my great aunt Ruth. It was crazy. So we didn't know what to do with all these ashes. We just dumped them in the garden. We were like, and we had a parade of ashes. We just had a ritual, and we were like, goodbye, goodbye, Aunt Ruth, goodbye. And then they all got mixed together. But we literally had those cremains of it was like 9 people. But I was like, so you don't want stuff to accumulate that the kiddos are going to have to just go through and be like, I mean, the ashes were fine, but there was so much stuff that I was like, oh my God, like pictures of people that you cannot name, those got to go.
Right. What about, though, have you ever thrown something away and then been like, oh, I wish I hadn't got rid of that?
But you know what they were? It was bigger items, actually. It wasn't sentimental stuff. It was like my mom had this couple of chairs and furniture. It was more big stuff, and it doesn't sound like you have tons of big stuff. It sounds like it's more sentimental stuff. But I mostly felt like that chair, I should have held on to the chair and some of her dishes and stuff like that. But at the time I was like, no, it's gotta go. So the other thing that I would say is don't make any decisions when you're in a heightened emotional state, because you will save weird shit and you will throw out stuff that you will. So it's good that you go through it once a year, not in a crisis, not after a huge event, but when you, like a regular checkup to the storage place.
I think too, I just had this thought, what I should do, especially with papers, take pictures. Just take pictures of papers. I can even make a book for each of the kids. Like, here is 5,000 images of all the crap you wanted me to save that I didn't, but I took a picture of it.
That is brilliant. You just thought of that? Brilliant.
I just thought of that. Yeah.
You're a Marie Kondo in your own right.
I listen, pursuant to our conversation about my home decor, I'm like, let's get rid of it. Let's get rid of it all. Like, I have a china cabinet. I mean, come on. I mean, I have china. I have china, but I don't need to. It doesn't need to be displayed like it's my prized possession. You know what I mean? It can just go on a shelf.
I guess that leads me to the question for you, which and it goes back to our other conversation, which is, do you think you just adopted that because it's what you thought you should do?
It's 100% that, because I learned at an early age. Like, I remember being on the younger side and going through something. I forget what it was, old birthday cards, and throwing them away. And my mom being like, "You're getting rid of that?" You know, she keeps everything. She keeps.
Oh, she does.
Yes, she keeps everything. But my middle child is my icon in this way. At summer camp, you send cards, you know, you're encouraged, and they like to receive mail. So I sent a lot of cards, and he received a lot of cards. He comes home from camp. This is not this past summer, but the summer before. I said, "Did you get all the cards I sent you?" He said, "Yes, I did. And they were so great. And on my last day of camp, I looked through all the letters that you and Gran, and I gave him a kiss and I threw him in the trash." And when he said it, I had this pang of like, "Oh, you threw him in the trash?" But of course, it served its purpose. The purpose was to give him something to remember us by while he was at camp. Then it was over. Then he was going to come home and be with us. He didn't need to hold on to it.
He's not sentimental in that way. No. What about clothing? Do you hold on to clothing?
No, I get rid of it. I mean, I kept my wedding dress, and I kept like a few of the kids' very first onesies. Remember the onesies that you made, that we made at your house? I have not all of them, but I have some of those. But yeah, I don't get sentimental about clothing. Aaron does. Aaron has his high school varsity jacket and his first pair of scrubs and his first doctor coat and all this kind of stuff. Yeah.
Wow. Mm-hmm. Do you go through your clothing you're not a shopper? You don't like to shop for clothes?
Well, I like to have clothes. I just don't like to shop for them. Yeah, no, I go through. I don't forget if you were here. You saw my closet. We have.
No, I've never seen your closet.
It's technically a walk-in, but not really. It was a very small closet. I have always had a very small closet. I know that if I had a huge closet, I would just collect a bunch of clothes. So it's kind of and shoes. So it's kind of a good thing that I don't. So no, that's one thing we sort of keep under control. I throw out something maybe like once every week or once every 2 weeks.
Wow.
Yeah, I get rid of stuff, really. It's the other stuff. It's the stuff that I feel like I'm supposed to have because I have kids, or I'm supposed to have because really a lot of the other people in my life are very sentimental. Aaron's very sentimental. My mother is very sentimental. My kids are very sentimental. So I feel like I have to keep all this stuff for them, but I really don't.
Wow.
If I take a picture.
Now, the china cabinet, was that a purchase that you thought, I should have this because I'm an adult? Mm-hmm. Or did you inherit it?
No, we were moving here from the city, and we were just both like, well, we need a dining set. And we went to the furniture store. It was the first time I went to like a real furniture store. And they had a matching dining table and chairs with a china cabinet. And something else. We've got 3 big pieces. It's all crappy furniture. It was a waste. It was expensive, and it was a waste of money because all furniture that's made since 1950 is crappy furniture. And
I like your dining table.
Well, it's big, but
I love it.
It's really like wobbly, and it's crappy. It's crappy. So I think I'm going to maybe after the holidays get rid of the china cabinet.
Wow.
And it's just this hulking thing. Like it doesn't give me any joy to look at it. It's just like, here's where we put all the crap that we use on Thanksgiving.
Right. It's more of a storage. It's not a showcase for anything special. What you need to do is get so many snow globes that then you put those in there maybe, but that's you don't really need, maybe a different kind of case for the snow globes.
But something like that would give me joy, some little bauble, something like that. It's just plates and vases, and somebody who is in my family has started a collection of something for me that I don't care for. But it's like, you know how it is, the person really wants to collect something for you, and they pick something, they have something that they collect, and then they go, well, would you like a different version of this thing I collect? And you know, and I remember saying once, like, oh, that's pretty. And next thing I know, I've got what she considers to be my version of her thing. This is not my mother. I have to feel like I have to say this because my mother will be listening. This is not my mother. And it's stuff that I feel that I have to make sure is out for when this person comes to my house.
Understood. I don't, I think everyone is like dead in my family. So I get free from some of that. Like, but I do, it's a part of me that goes, oh, someone is thinking about you that's collecting something for you. It just, maybe they would ask them if they could collect, I don't know.
To me, the collecting impulse, I don't relate to. I mean, with the exception of maybe that I like these pretty snow globes. I don't collect anything. And my mother collects everything.
She does?
She does. She collects. She has a china pattern. She has a crystal pattern. She collects. She's a big reader, so she collects books.
I remember. Everything. I remember the house on Wayne, right? And it was a duplex. It was a 2-floor. She had a lot of nice stuff. It is. It's all very nice, but it's stuff. It's a lot of stuff, and I'm just finding that I'm not as into stuff as I thought I was. Well, I think the pandemic has done that to people too. It has increased, for me anyway, it has increased my awareness that like all this stuff is not going to save us from certain things.
I mean, not from nothing. It's not going to save you from anything. And you have to clean it, and you have to store it, and you have to move it, and you feel for some reason you have to replace it if it gets broken. Like it's just a yoke. It's a yoke around my neck.
Yes.
And Aaron and I fantasize when the kids leave, we're going to get a studio apartment. We're going to have no possessions, and we're going to just do whatever we want that doesn't have anything to do with buying, maintaining, or storing stuff of any stripe.
That's brilliant. I think that is a great plan. My only caveat is please do it in California. That's all I have to say.
Yes, sister. Yes, of course. That's what we want. We either want to live in the Bay.
Today on I Survived Theater School, we have the Fancy Friends, Dave Dastmalchian and John Hoogenakker. I call them Fancy Friends because that's what they are. They are fancy, they work all the time, and they are delightful human beings. What do you think?
And they have fancy last names.
They have fancy last names.
When I was making the episode art, I'm like, oh, of course, these two have to have the longest last names of all
they really do.
We've ever had.
We'll just call them Dave.
But you guys have seen them. I mean, not necessarily together, but Dave was his first film role was in The Dark Knight. So I would love to have him back sometime and ask about Heath Ledger. Because I bet that he's got a lot to tell about that. Anyway, so Dave has mostly a film career. He's also a screenwriter. He has written a few films that are excellent, including Animals and All Creatures Here Below, 2 excellent films. And John is a lot on television.
He's a television guy. He was on Jack Ryan as one of the big leads, and they're in an outstanding film called Teacher together. So that's something to check out.
Right. And the two of them wanted to do the interview together because they're such close friends, and they shared a lot of memories. And it was interesting to have, as it's our first duo, it was interesting to explore their friendship as a way that they both survived theater school.
Yeah.
So please enjoy Dave Dastmalchian and John Hoogenakker.
You got to call her up again and ask her to do her seasonally. It's
we will.
Epic.
All right. I'm going to make a note of that right now. Anyway, congratulations, John and Dave. You survived theater school.
Yeah,
I mean,
barely.
No, not barely. You guys, I think you both had excellent theater school careers, but I'd like to hear it from you.
Yeah,
about your experience.
I'm so glad you're our first duo that we've had on today. So the Fancy Friends. And I wanted to know about your experience like together as well as apart. But like my first question for you is, did you love each other right away?
I don't know, John. Did you?
Well, no pressure.
It took me a while. It took me a while to warm up to.
I've known Gina the longest. And by the way, it's so good to see you. It's only been 20 years.
I know.
Like this. I mean, we've messaged and emailed a lot, but Jesus, this is amazing. Oh my God. So I was roommates with Gina and we were very close. And then I left school for a year. And so the school moves forward. Jen, you and Gina were in the same grade. You guys all moved forward. And when I came back, it was a whole new group of people to get to know. And John was one of the first people that I knew when I got back. So I felt very out of place, and it was hard to come into because it's such a competitive environment and it's such a intense environment, and I was both competitive and intense. So to jump into the fire with a whole new group of people, to kind of, it's hard because you're posturing, you're sizing up, but at the same time you're looking for connection, you're looking for support, and it's such a conflict. And John, I'm not going to get emotional today, I swear to God, but was like one of the first people that extended such a kind, generous, he's got that inimitable
I'm a cuddler
sincerity, which is what makes him such a brilliant actor. But he had that like look me in the eyes in class and like, hey, he has a little bit of a drawl. Like, I'm really excited you're here and I want to get to know you and I hope we get to work together. And then we went and hung out at his apartment soon after that and maybe smoked something. This is recorded. Sorry, John. And then we watched Star Wars stuff together. And that was our bond. So that's my version of the story.
What's your version, John?
No, God, we had a lot of fun. I have old pictures of you and I and Aisha and
snuggling.
Geneba, snuggling, and which I'm going to send you guys.
Yes, please do.
But we. Geez, I just remember. I remember Dave's ebullience from day one. His like drive and his positive energy, and I think that is the thing that has been such a driving force in Dave's career. Is that he just never stops. It comes down to energy and positivity, and he's constantly pumping that into the world. And I think Dave has known for many, many years that that kind of stuff comes back to you. And I think I was drawn to that in Dave, from the giddy up.
But did you also recognize somehow that he needed you to take on that stare you in the eye and tell him you want to get to know him vibe? Did you know that he felt overwhelmed coming back?
I think from my perspective, the thing that drew Dave and I to one another was a sense that, in the theater school, at the time that we were all there, was such a, it was a lot of mindfuckery going on. And there was a lot of, I think a lot of us in the acting track, especially, I know this was the case throughout the school, wanted, positive reinforcement from teachers. And sometimes I think my perspective was that people were manufacturing emotions and things to achieve that positive reinforcement. And Dave just seemed to be Dave to me, which I really, really enjoyed and appreciated. And and so I think it was Dave's his sort of genuine vibe that I was.
I think both of you, when I've run into you, I mean, I live in California now, but I've seen you like at PR, and Dave, I ran into you once at a Starbucks in Chicago. The genuineness is unbelievable. So I think you're both fancy, and I'm sort of starstruck, but there is this sort of, both of you have this sort of face to face, like look you in the eye. I'm going to have an actual conversation with you. And I think that makes you not only great actors, but what's more important to me is great human beings. And I don't know. I'm just so glad you guys found each other and that you're friends.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's how I feel about Gina. Yeah, that's how I feel about Gina.
Of the work, and outside of our mutual passionate love for the theater, acting, film, storytelling, character creation, cinema history, literature, like John and I did kick it off immediately with a lot of kindred kind of passions for things, which we all shared because we all were in that vortex. And obviously we were drawn there because we had a passion for this stuff. But, I've been through the ringer in my life outside of my acting career as well. And John was always one of the first people to show up and be there for me when I needed someone as well, which was, you're not taught that again, this is about surviving the theater school. You're taught that you're in the ensemble family mode during rehearsal, and it felt like kind of during a production, but then it was right back to, this really intensely bizarre, like John, I mean, there's no better, I guess, adverb than mindfuckery of, and it was, I'm very grateful. And many great true friendships came out of that time, because when you go through something that intense and that trying, but I would love to tell a quick story if I can, because we were we were absolutely fuck ups. We were in trouble a lot, because it's no mystery that I had a pretty intense substance abuse problem in college, and John had a pretty serious attitude problem in college. And neither of us dealt well with authority, although we loved being directed, which has always been a paradox with us. Like, we love great directors that get in and like help guide us and shape things, but at the same time, we are the first people to, get our backs up sometimes. And I remember John and I were so frustrated that some of the people, like there was this feeling of like posturing or presentation that always felt inauthentic to us. And we wanted, we're in Chicago, we want to rub real dirt on our faces and smash glass, and we're going to get in there. And we were doing a scene together from Glenn Ross for second year scene study work with Joe Slowick. And it was so intense. It was the Moss Aronow scene at the Chinese restaurant. John is just needling into me to like, you're going to get in on this heist, or I'm going to ruin your life. And we got into that so much. It was all space work, and generally, John and I was either in rave clothes, or John was in some tie-dye Bob Marley thing. And so we had this big special guest coming to the theater school who was going to do a scene study workshop. And it was F. Murray Abraham. And I'll never forget, we were all so excited, big fans.
Wow.
We go, they did it at a separate location on campus. And
it was where we had History of Dramatic Lit, I think,
where nobody cheated. And he goes, he blew through the scenes that he was working on so quickly, and he was getting frustrated. Like, stop with the bullshit. Stop with the presentation. Like, let's work these.
And he was also like not giving, like he would give a really incisive note, and then would be like, all right, now fuck off and do better in life.
Yeah.
And that was it.
He didn't want over preparation. He wanted this to be like a malleable Play-Doh-y kind of moment where we could. So we were not part of that event. John and I were just sitting in the back row, probably just like, whoa, this is so cool, dude. Like, that's F. Murray Abraham doing scenes. And he looked to the crowd. He's like, is that all you got? Because they had prepared, I don't remember, 4 or 5 scenes for him to work on.
Yeah, it was like 2 from each classroom. And then we had like a break, and the teachers were kind of looking around at each other like, well, that's all I had. And Dave,
that's all I got.
Yeah, Dave, you went.
Slowick turned to me and John, and Slowick goes, you guys. And I was like, can we do it, John? Can we do it? And John's like, yeah, let's do it. We had no prop prepper. Everyone else is in costumes, and they've got their props. And John and I hopped up with, we made do, right? We got a bottle that we borrowed from someone else's scene.
Yeah.
Some cups. And we jumped up there, and we did this scene where F. Murray had recently done the piece, or he was familiar enough with it that he could kind of jump in and do with this. But I was so proud that day of, even though I knew what F-ups we were, and even though I knew that I knew that the work we were putting into, and the discipline and the love we were putting into building these characters together, and how much we loved playing off one another, I knew in that moment, this is something I'm going to do with this guy for the rest of my life. And sure enough, we've gone on to do 2 films together outside of school. We continue to collaborate. I knew in that moment, though, I was like, this guy, I'm holding on to him for the rest of my acting life.
Dude, I want to jump in, because first of all, it was an amazing experience. And we were like greyhounds just ready to run. And we didn't realize that. So we talk about surviving the theater school. I don't know where to start, but more importantly, I don't know where I should stop. So you guys got to shut me up.
All right.
I got that bottle from my roommate who drank Jameson like all the time. So I ran across, because we were in not Seton Hall, but Sanctuary,
University.
right across. Yeah,
Sure.
And I got the bottle, and I came back, and Dave and I were getting ready, and we do the scene, and we knew that F. Murray was going to just like give us a note and dismiss us. So he gave us this note, and the one thing was, I had been breaking up this paragraph that I was given to Dave, kind of feeling my way through it and kind of schmacting. And he was like, this David Mamet gives you all of the direction you need with the punctuation. It's like Shakespeare, and you need to just drive through without taking a break, because that's going to give you more payoff at the end of the scene. And Dave and I looked at each other, and we just started doing the scene before he could dismiss us. So we jumped right into it, and he had gone through all the people in our class that had been put forward. He had gone through upperclassmen, and that was the first group. Dave and I were the first 2 that had the audacity to just take the note and jump back in. And
That's fantastic.
When we finished, he was like, "That is preparation." And he, do you remember that, dude? Because he turned around, and you and I were like, "Up top, motherfucker! That's right, goddamn it! That's preparation."
Cut us now, motherfuckers.
Yeah.
I love that.
So good.
I love that.
So
I love that, because what you're telling me in that is you each made a decision. Our company is called Undeniable. So you made a decision to be undeniable. You made a decision to not let him. I'm sure everybody would. I'm not sure anybody else in that situation would have been willing to get up and go on and not let him deny you, not let him interrupt you. And you were like 18, 19 years old, which is like even more. So you both mentioned mindfuckery, which is a very evergreen theme on our podcast. And I would love to hear a little bit more about, as you look back at this time in your life now, and you imagine, because some of our professors were probably the age then that we are now. What do you make of some of this? How have you reconciled some of what you now consider to be mindfuckery? Did it feel like mindfuckery then, or does it just look that way in the rear view?
I'm just going to a quick caveat in that I teach at the theater school. So I'm trying to change the culture there a little bit. And so I just always am really hyper aware that like we want say whatever you want. That's what I want to say.
We will.
Say whatever
me and John.
Okay. I know you will, but I always like to.
The Vincentian brothers called in the legal team, man. They're coming after.
Because sometimes people are like, well, I don't know.
No. Don't worry. You're talking to John and Dave.
Okay, great.
Don't worry about it.
Okay,
John.
So yeah,
go for it. Go for it. Mindfuckery. What's it all about?
John, you go first, because I know what I'm going to say.
All right. Yeah. I have no idea what I'm going to say. We're on a journey of discovery here. No, first of all, to your point, Jen, I know John, and I admire him greatly. I feel like there's got to be 5 of him in the planet to achieve all the stuff that he's achieved. And the theater school of today bears little, if any, resemblance to the theater school that Dave and I and you guys attended. And that said, I don't feel like the mindfuckery that I felt I was that I received was the result of some jerk ass cadre of teachers sitting around in a circle and being like, who can we fuck on, who can we shit on today? I don't think that's how it was. I think the difference was there was a greater focus on academia at that point. It was like just giving your life to an institution and a philosophy and an approach to doing theater that was, at that time, intensely cloistered, didn't allow us to kind of step outside of the school. And we all, to a certain extent, kind of knew what we were signing up for when we came on board. I had been in ROTC when I was in high school. I had competed in debate. So I had kind of dealt with a lot of that stuff at the beginning. And I just kind of felt like when I was at theater school, as Dave said, I had a real attitude problem because I was like, I had to take on a lot of debt to go to that school. My family came together and did everything they could to help me, but I graduated with a lot of debt. And I kind of felt like, you know what, I'm paying you. Like, we get to have a conversation about this. I know you're the pro. I know you've been doing this your entire adult life, but I have questions. And I feel like I'm due an answer, and a considered answer. And you don't get to just shut me down because I asked a question and I'm 19 and you're 54. Because I'm here taking on a lot of personal debt that I'm going to carry into my adult life, and you owe me answers. That's just, let's just call that an opening. Sally and Dave, you can go for a little bit.
I felt like, it was the perfect place for me to train. The culture was utterly complicated, complex, filled with nuance, lots of gray area. It came from a tradition steeped in some really important and impressive theater movements that were more militaristic and disciplinary and really intense. I'll always be grateful for the tools that I picked up in the theater school. To this day, save me on an almost daily basis on sets, because the awareness it gave me of my body and my voice and, the depth of my psychology to be able to solve problems on the fly and repeat, emotional recreations was really important. I will say that there were conflicting philosophies and approaches, which is, I think, very healthy. One of the things I loved was that nobody said, this is the theater school way. It was like, here's the Joe Slowick way. Here's the Bella Itkin way. Here's the David Avcali way. Here's the Rick Murphy way. You go to these classes, you see what works for you. You see where you're doing the best work. And then you have to grow up quickly, and you have to be prepared for this dog eat dog world of the arts that you're going to be thrown into once you graduate here. There is no kind of kind or gentle or entirely psychologically easy way to prepare somebody for the meat grinder that is the show business. And so for all those reasons, I was incredibly grateful. I think there was a lack of oversight when it came to mental wellness with some of the faculty, and I'll always hold them responsible for the fact that they allowed sexual relationships between professors and students. I think it's entirely inappropriate for people in that kind of power in their.
It's unbelievable when you look back on it. It's unbelievable.
When I think back on the fact that I knew there were teachers that we were meant to listen to and respect and regard and trust with our deepest parts of ourselves, who were seducing and having sex with students, that breaks my heart. And I would tell them that to their faces today if I could see them, but I hope they'll watch. And I also think that there was some abusive behavior that I'll never understand, other than they were human beings who were just people that were that did some things that made I like to believe that they thought they might have been helping push us, but some of the things that were either said or done, I go, man, I can remember sitting with Gina one time, and I mean, I'm a pretty emotionally fragile guy, but I was like on the verge of tears of something that had happened with one of the professors that we both really admired, but also we both really kind of feared. And it was just like, why? But in all, I'm grateful, because I'm not one of those people. I'll run into people from the theater school who are just carrying so much damage from that time. And I'm so grateful that when I look back on my time at the theater school, in all honesty, it's with a lot of positive. I really go, wow, that was an amazing experience. Yes, I have anger, frustration, pains about certain things that happened that I can't believe happened, but I feel like it really prepared me for the world in which I'm working now.
I totally agree. And I look back on that time and I kind of feel like when I look at things that I feel like have gone pear-shaped and that I was a part of, I always try and think about what could I have done better. And for me, I look back on that period and I think that I was not emotionally mature enough, or perhaps mature enough in general, to take on board everything that I could have learned as an actor. And I'm talking about like technique wise in that program, because I was so emotionally just kind of bombarded with. So much of it is subjective in the beginning. And we're going into a career where you may go up against 4 other people in your type, or maybe not in your type, who are phenomenal actors. And you may get that job or you may not. And there could be any number of reasons why you did or you didn't. And kind of trying to prepare a child, and let's be honest, if you're not in the master's track, you're still a child, for the realities and the emotional rigors of what could end up being a career and a full life doing that stuff, would be the greatest act of compassion that an educational center could impart to a child. And I feel like the theater school was like, that wasn't even a thing. Not understanding why, everybody probably makes the case of like, gee whiz, I was so talented in my hometown. And then I went to the theater school and I was like, oh my God, everybody's talented. What am I going to do? But you're still in class with folks, all these hours a day, all these days a week. And some people are become darlings. Some people do not. Some people back then were kept on after the first year, after the second year, and some people were not. And there were like major head scratchers about that. Like, to go back and to have completed 2 years and to be respected in the eyes of your peers and presumably in the eyes of your teachers, and then to get that letter that, maybe this isn't for you. To be able to make that determination in another person's life and in that way is just, it's astounding that was what we signed up for. And I'll tell you, I remember, I'll never forget, that was not really made clear prior to coming to the theater school. Like, actually sitting there on the first day, I remember sitting cross-legged on the floor and listening to Bridges kind of talking, this is the greatest city in the mind of God. And, and just being like, some of you will graduate, most of you will not. I remember like, wow, that's pretty intense. I was not so clear on the whole. Half of you are going to get cut the first year, and then half of the remaining are going to get cut the second year. That to me was like deeply disingenuous, because what was really happening, and again, the school is a completely different school now. They've dealt with this stuff. What was happening was they were bringing in free labor that was actually paying them shitloads of money to be free labor, and then kicking them to the curb. They, I think, had a pretty good idea at audition which of these 4 kids were actually going to make it to graduation. And I think we had some idea of that, but we were literally pitted against one another. I'll give you one example, and then I'll shut up and let Dave go again. We did an intro in second year called Laughing Wild, and it was by Christopher Durang. And it's a 2-person, it's a 2-hander. It's a man and it's a woman. And what they did was they cast 4 males and something like 9 females. And the director never set the lines. So every night, it was literally these kids who still had not been invited back for their 3rd year and could still be cut.
What the?
In a fucking verbal knife fight every night.
This is fucking crazy.
Yeah. And, it was the director, like, I still had really long hair at that point. Jason Pierce had really long hair. Brian Sharp had really long hair. And I think it was Hunter.
Andre.
Andre?
Andre.
And it was kind of like Ilko didn't really like our long hair. So it was like, you guys all have to look the same. That's what I'm going for. So we all got our hair cut. And then we commenced to like fighting over these lines. And what we ultimately did was probably pretty cool to look at, but it was also a hot mess. Because these
damaging.
Yeah, totally.
Damaging.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it begs so I guess the bigger question here for me, and I don't know what you guys think, but that at 17, should we be doing this? I really, I mean, I know for me, I'm grateful as hell I went there. I was cut and then asked back. It was a weird thing. I got a letter and then another letter. And then, so as a 17-year-old I was 16, like this is so much mind-fuckery inherent in the system and when we went there. I mean, we're all glad we went, but like, man, kids, I don't know that we should be, if I had a kid, I don't know that I want my kid to be engaged in a verbal knife fight at 17 with Hunter Andre. Right. I don't know, but whatever. That's a bigger question.
I mean, I wouldn't put my kids though on the track right now to be actors because of that. But the harsh reality is that the business of theater and the business of film and television needs 20, 21, 22-year-old actors. So to throw them into the best training you can at 18, 19, 20, 21, it sucks. But it's also like, it's an exceptional calling to choose the path of the artist. And it's more, not to be, whatever ridiculous about it, but it is like, it's such an unfair, the world is so unfair, as we know. Jesus Christ, turn on the news right now. The world is an unfair place, but the arts are so unfair. And it's like, if someone's going to, it's such a complicated question. Because I do think like right at like 18, maybe that's the earliest. If my kid said, Dad, I want to do what you do, I'd say you do as much community theater and high school theater and drama as you can, speech, debate, blah, blah, blah. I'm not taking them to a damn Hollywood audition until they're 18. And if they want to pursue it, I would want them to go study and train somewhere like what the theater school is now, at 18. But it's really tricky. Complicated. It is.
Yeah.
I will say that, I was just going to throw this in. When I graduated, I got a job working at Chicago Shakespeare, which was started like a couple months after graduation. And I got on stage with Kevin Goodall, Lisa Dodson, Greg Winkler, Brad Armacost, all these amazing classic Chicago actors, stalwart Chicago actors. And it was the first show in their new space. So they had all these great people in the cast. So I got so lucky to be, a messenger in that play. But that was when my personal education in the theater like really started. Mm-hmm. And that was when I saw like these titans kind of dealing with the humdrum rejection of, I went for another one at PR, didn't get it. Yeah, but it went to blah, 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 and he's a great dude, which is a thing I've always loved about Chicago. It's like, you get to a certain age, it's always the same folks in the room, and you kind of are cheering for everybody. You sit in that waiting room, especially PR, and it's always a reunion of friends. But so when I talk to people, parents of child actors on sets who want to know what I would advise them to do if these were my kids, like Dave, I'm kind of like, if they are still interested in this when they're 18, I would take all the money that you've saved for college, if you've saved any, and just fund their apartment in Los Angeles or Chicago or New York. Like, start them off when they're that early, because they're 4 years ahead of the rest of the pack when they graduate, and they will have spent that 4 years learning at the feet of actual working professionals.
Yeah. Well, the truth is, when somebody wants to be this from the time they're 5 years old, which probably all of us did, there's no stopping them. I mean, we've heard stories of parents saying, please don't go study theater, please do something else. And they're going to do what they're going to do. But so let's bring it back to when you guys decided you wanted to go to a conservatory for college. Was that something you knew all along? Did you figure it out later? How did you pick DePaul?
For me, it was fate. It was, it was truly fate. I mean, it was like a miracle of God. And to me, God works through teachers. It was the power of teachers. My parents were a mess throughout my, junior high and high school years, where I was very much on my own in a lot of regards. And I was a high functioning, academically, in a good tier. But I was really, excelling in both speech and football. Those were kind of my two strengths coming through high school. And I didn't see the path towards the academic dreams that I had for college in speech or acting or drama, for God's sake. But I did through football. So my dream was, going into my senior year of high school, I was going to be as yoked as possible, play the best game I could play, get us to state, get a scholarship to go to a better school than I could go to that I knew was at my hands with the amount of money that my mom and I had. And with that scholarship, I was going to try and become a high school football coach who ran the drama club. That was my dream for myself. Two teachers, my speech coach and our drama teacher, sat down with me separately and said, you have something. We will help you. If you're afraid of applying to like arts programs or theater or following a track in drama. And hearing that was mind blowing. And they did. They helped me do the research. I looked at SMU, NYU, and DePaul. I did a regional audition and then ultimately drove up to Chicago. And my audition was in front of John Jenkins and John Watts. I'll never forget. I was there in cutoff jean shorts, a tie-dye Janis Joplin t-shirt, and my football socks. And there was a bunch of kids in leotards and jazz shoes who knew what they meant when they were saying things. I did it. My monologue was completely wrong. They said, don't do a dialect. And I did a scene from Equus. And then we said, don't do a dialect. And I luckily remembered, does a tiger wear a necktie? And I just threw that out there. And it was fate. It was God. It was whatever you choose to believe. But then I got a letter very soon after that, and I was miserable thinking about playing 4 years of college football. That's important to note. I did not want to do that, but I knew it was a means to an end. My brother was a collegiate athlete, and I knew the demands of that and that was going to be my life for 4 years. But for me to get the education I wanted, it was worth it. And I got this letter that not only had I been invited to participate in the theater school program, but I had also been given this huge scholarship called the Stanley. And
good for you, Dave. We're all happy for you.
That's my story.
I am.
That's my story. I'm done.
What about you, John?
As John just finished the story about the buckets. Hey, by the way, I left school with a massive amount of debt as well because my scholarship did not cover living expenses. That's why I had to leave theater school for a year to go.
Dave wanted to live in a 4-bedroom, 3-bathroom house.
No.
So it wasn't
in Los Angeles and commute.
Gina could tell you where we lived on Mill. It was not. What was our landlord's name? What was his name?
Earl Bianchi.
Was Lil the place that was like right around the corner from Healing Earth Resources?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the one where like a couple or an adjacent building had the deck collapsed,
yes,
right?
It was very close to there. Yeah. And the tanks. Remember the space-time tanks, John? The floating tanks.
What's that?
Didn't we go do that together once? The tanks, the deprivation, the sensory.
Oh yeah.
Anyway, sorry, John. Yeah,
it was right there. One of the oldest ones in the city is right there. Yeah.
Thanks for shitting on my.
No, dude,
I'm
so happy.
For you.
So happy for you for getting a scholarship to DePaul. That's great. Good for you. I didn't get a scholarship. So I totally very similar story, except I was not going to be an athlete ever. I was in speech and debate in high school. I had not done theater since I was a child, like a younger child, because I got braces, and my dad, who was a local actor in Charlotte, was like, there's no market for a kid with braces. So then I was, I think in about 10th grade, I started competing in humorous interpretation, which Dave, you did.
I did DI.
Yeah. And I did really well in that. And so then when I got to senior year, the drama teacher, and I had never taken drama at the theater at the high school, she would accompany the speech team on debate trips. She reached out and she was like, hey, if you want to take this class, you can take the senior level drama class. And she and my speech coach, Barbara Miller, said, you should check out some theater schools, see where you can study. And I looked into Juilliard. I was really interested in, because I knew that Robin Williams had gone there, but I think it was more expensive to audition there. And I somehow missed the whole boat on, I think a lot of people, I know Kelly, my wife, auditioned at, in Chicago, but for a bunch of schools all at once.
Mm-hmm.
Like
the Erdas or the whatever.
Yeah. And I came in like late January, early February, and we stayed. It was going to be a big deal for my family, so we stayed at the Palmer House. And I went, and again, like Dave, I was surrounded by all these kids that just seemed so focused and so like tuned into this world that all of a sudden seemed very foreign to me and completely unattainable. And like I was just completely a fish out of water. And and I did the drama teacher had given me a monologue that was, going to be probably like, does a tiger wear a necktie or something, appropriate for the venue. And I didn't, we had done a musical called Runaways. And there was a monologue in Runaways that I thought, it just really spoke to me. It was about a young kid whose mother had passed away, and he was kind of like just mourning her. And I remembered my drama teacher being like, well, it's your life. Good luck. And I came to the school, and we did the whole, like, they led us through warm-ups, which was bizarre. That was Patrice, I think. And then I did my monologue for like Betsy, I believe, and maybe John and possibly Bill Brown. And I left completely dejected. And I told my dad, I was like, well, that's not going to happen. Have a
Which is so, I have to interrupt and say that everyone we talk to, I am not kidding you. Every single human I've talked to says, I left that place after my audition feeling like, well, I don't know. I think I bombed, but no one I've talked to has been like, I nailed that shit. I think they got in.
Well, that's, that's so indicative of the way, like the vibe at the time. The teachers weren't there to coddle you. Right. And be like, good job. You really nailed it.
You've really got a chance here.
Yeah, I think you're going to go places, said no DePaul teacher ever. No. I'm certainly they do now. But yeah, so we left, and I'd forgotten my watch, because, you had to, like, all of a sudden, like, I think I just barely remembered to bring sweatpants or something like that. And so I forgot my watch. So my dad was like, I'm sure you did fine, bud. And so, like, the next day or whatever, he calls Melissa Meltzer, and he's like, hey, Melissa, I'm wondering, did you guys find a watch? Because John, he lost a watch. You didn't find a watch, huh? Okay. All right. Well, thank you. And then she was like, so how does John feel like he did? And my dad was like, oh, well, he bombed it. He didn't feel like he did very well at all. So yeah, I just wanted to make sure we got that watch before we go back to Charlotte. And she was like, yeah, he's one of, we're sending out a couple letters of admission right now, or whatever, acceptance right now, and he's one of them.
Wow.
And I just could not believe it. And
that's awesome.
And so yeah, it was really, really great. But again, I had no idea what I was signing up for, because if it wasn't DePaul, it was going to be Appalachian State, or community college in Charlotte. Because I mean, I had I was in AP classes and I had done well on my SATs, but I was not a focused student otherwise, and didn't have the scores to get into State or Carolina or any of the vaunted universities in my home state.
So according to my research, you guys did at least 2 shows together.
At the theater school.
Yeah. Right. Was it
I Got the Blues?
I Got the Blues and Peter Pan?
And Peter Pan.
Mm-hmm. And we did
Yeah.
we did the Glengarry Glen Ross scene together. And then our senior year, when we were all very frustrated with the plays that had been mostly, there were some really cool plays that were selected for our 4th year, but we were frustrated collectively. John, his wife Kelly, our friend Denizak, a whole group of us got together and we put on our own production of Wojciech. We worked together doing that outside of school and performed at a coffee shop nearby because we were determined to do challenging work that was going to actually give us a chance to do something. So yeah, but while we were those first 4 years, and then in the year since, we've done 3 things together, probably, or 4. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Teacher was amazing. Teacher was a good film.
Thank you. Thanks.
Yeah, I really liked
it. I was so excited when we got John. It's just putting him into anything is going to elevate it. As you guys know, you watch any TV show, any movie, any play, you name it, John comes into something, he's going to elevate it. But I knew that relationship, I needed that character that I played in Teacher had nobody else to ground him. He had nobody else to cling to. He had nobody else to like to make me feel any sense of the character's much needed humanity for the audience to get on board with him in those moments that John and I got. And John did a lot of stuff that magically woke up. It was a great script, but man, John took it to a greater level with which is the magic he does. He did the same thing in Animals when I said, well, you've got to please be in my movie, please. I knew what he would do. And sure as shit, he did it. He walked in and everybody was just like, I mean, it's one of the best scenes of a movie that I'm very proud of. It's, a 90-minute film filled with scenes that I love, but that is the scene I've probably gone back to more than any. And I go, God, yes. I'm really proud of the writing I did there, but what he did with little nuanced moments. I've learned a lot watching my friend on stage and on set, and I will continue to. I also watch everything he does, obviously, because he is my friend, but also because he gets to do a lot of really cool stuff. And but I learn a lot. I learn a lot from you, John.
I feel the same way about you, man. I gotta say, Dave has always been an inspiration to me because of, as I mentioned at the beginning of our talk, because of the positivity that he puts out into the world. And Dave, as he mentioned earlier, went through the ringer with substance abuse. And I think it's less than 7% of people who have been where you were ever come back. And so to be one of those people who not just survived, but who thrived in an already incredibly challenging industry is just absolutely astounding. And to continually go back to the well and create, be a force of creativity and your own engine and guiding your own ship while being a partner and a father is I feel so lucky that I've gotten to lean on you for inspiration and to call you for advice.
It's wonderful. Like I'm so grateful. And that's another thing. I'll always thank God for the theater school because of John Hoogenakker and so many people that have been instrumental in my life. And I think it's important to note too, as far as the friendships that were forged in that time. You asked earlier too, there were some teachers that taught me some wonderful techniques and skills, but also really hurt my heart in some certain ways. But it wouldn't be fair to neglect and not point out that, like, I'll never forget if there was one person who actually did take time to try, I felt like in her way to teach us ways of coping was Phyllis for me. She talked to me a lot about meditation. She introduced me to some books that were really instrumental to my journey, and like really wacky, like psychedelic stuff that I was really invested in thinking about at the time, and really cool ways of trying to process depression. I wasn't diagnosed at that time, and I wasn't getting the proper help that I needed for my depression, but that was really, I'm so grateful, as well as, you know, the encouragement that someone like her showed. She was a needed angel at the time for me, in a dark place. And Bridges, I mean, I know he wasn't, faculty, he was staff, but that guy recognized and saw some stuff that no one else was willing to address in my self-destruction. And he showed up for me way outside and above and beyond the roll call of whatever his payroll was or required of him.
And his door was always open. And as a side note, he attended your wedding, I believe, didn't he?
Yeah.
And he attended mine down in Alabama. Yeah. And Dave's was in California.
Yeah. He's he for all of his shit giving and making fun of and sideways remarks, there was underneath that this deep concern and love for the students that, when I needed it most, was there for me, and is a dear and close personal friend to this day. I'm all over the place now, guys. My brain is spinning. The coffee's kicked in. I'm getting emotional, but I'm thinking too about, like, you talked about when we first did plays together, and I'm just having all these flashbacks of me and John. Like, I smoked cigarettes. John did not, but we would go out back sometimes when we were at, like on the fire escape at the Victory Gardens where we were doing I Got the Blues, and we'd talk about this stuff. It's like, God, just doing the shows was actually, you're right, that was probably the best education we ever got, was just doing the work.
You can hear it. So you can hear it in Dave now, like some of the exuberance. But he was this guy when we would go back and we would be out back, and, you know, he'd be smoking and he'd be talking about, like, Johnny, I love you, brother. I tell you what, man, we're going to fucking do this shit. And one day we're going to be so fucking big. It's all going to happen, bro. It's all going to happen. And you just can't wait, man. I love you so much. It's going to be so great. And I would just be like, I just want to survive fucking theater school. But he has made, like, the dude has made it happen.
He sure has.
He done it.
Sure has.
Wait, I have a question. Go. You want to go, Beans?
No, you go ahead.
Okay, I have a question about that, because I'm always fascinated by two things: the showcase experience in Los Angeles for people. As I don't know why, I just love that, because the stories are so. Mine was insane.
Thumbs down.
Thumbs down. I had a run-in with John C. Reilly that did not go well, and then I know
that's the one negative interaction with John C. Reilly.
I had it. And then also resilience. Those are the two things I want to cover before we get out. But my question is about that showcase. What the hell was your experience like?
I'll go. Mine's quick and easy. I was so strung out by that point, you guys. I was literally scrambling to find methadone clinics in Los Angeles and New York where I could go get doses so I wouldn't get sick from withdrawals. That was my top concern. I did a scene with Whitney Sneed at the time, we were doing this really fun horror scene together that I thought would be a good showcase for LA. But I got no interest, no check marks from anybody. And then luckily somebody invited me. I got to go over and go to Universal Studios for the day. And I got to go to DreamWorks, which was cool for a minute, but it was completely unrelated to my audition. It was because somebody had invited me to go over there. And that was my big, it was terrible. And I was very close with John at the time, but nobody knew. See, you guys got to understand. I didn't tell. It wasn't like John or my friends. They knew something was wrong with me, but it wasn't like, hey guys, I got to go score. I was very good at hiding my suffering, and which is what made it was so devastating. I know for John and Kelly and my friends who immediately came, like when I wound up in Kansas after I bottomed out in Chicago, and they would come see me, he was just like, would say things like, I'm sorry, I didn't know. And I'm like, how could you? I'm that good of an actor.
Yeah, I lived with him, and I didn't know either. I mean,
Sorry. So,
well, but that oh, sorry. Go ahead,
that was my showcase experience. It was a big part.
Okay. Yours and mine similar. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, what about yours, John?
Well, it was Denizak and I were scene partners, and we no, I can't remember.
You guys did scenes. We just did monologues.
We did monologues. Yeah.
Denizak and I went later for a separate event when we were like young actors in Chicago. But yeah, when I got out there, I did the thing. I didn't get any, like, there was no love for me, and it was it was nerve-wracking to do the thing, because you're telling yourself at that point, it's like, all right, well, if it doesn't happen here, I guess I'll just go back to pumping gas or whatever. Right. And Kelly and I had started kind of talking to each other. I had literally had seen her outside of the theater school one morning while we were all gearing up for showcase, and was just admiring her. And Denizak saw me admiring her, and then he did this thing that only Denizak does, where he's like, "Dude, what was that?" And then Shayna, like around the same time, was like, I really like John and I want him in my life, but I don't want to date him. One of you girls, it should be you, Kelly, because I think, Ogden was maybe with Lisa at this point. But so somebody, by our two close friends, had kind of, pushed us in that direction. And by the time we made it to Los Angeles, we went to a house party after, the audition day or whatever, the showcase. And John C. Reilly was at the party, which I remember distinctly thinking was super cool. Although the party just felt like we had all told ourselves like what LA was.
Oh my God.
At that point.
I forgot about that party.
Yeah. So Kelly and I were
met up with those Russian girls. Do you remember that at all? In my drug stuff. And I brought like two Russian girls to that party that didn't even speak English. Do you remember that at all?
That's hilarious. No, I didn't see, because Kelly and I were there for I'm not joking, for 15, 20 minutes.
And then you took off to go to the hotel.
And we took off. We were like, this is whatever. This is gross. I don't want to do this. And so she and the girls had rented some convertible, and we went for a drive to see the Pacific Ocean, because Kelly had never seen it at that point. And so we're standing there in the dark overlooking the Pacific Ocean, and I'm like super shy when I was dating back in the day. And Kelly looked at me and was like, "Now is when you kiss me." And so the best thing for me that came out of the theater school is my relationship with her. Your
relationship with me.
Oh.
Yeah. Yes.
That too. Well, Dave.
She's right here, so I had to.
Dave.
I always liked her. I always liked that woman.
I did a lot of scene work with Kelly. We never got to.
She's not really right here. You guys can stop.
Oh, I really like her.
She's the best, man.
So, Dave, talking about our apartment brought up a bunch of memories for me that I had forgotten about. And I'll just share one of them with you now that is really touching my heart. So the thing about you is that you always possessed yourself as an artist. Despite, it sounds like you were experiencing a lot of depression, and despite problems that you had, one of your strengths, in my mind, has always been no conflict or ambivalence about being an artist. And you taught that to me. And I never did any type of visual art in my life until we lived in that apartment. And all of a sudden I got into drawing. And you were so supportive of, I'm getting emotional.
I'm going to cry.
You were so supportive of me. And I remember thinking, oh, I'm an artist too. So thank you for that.
The nights we would sit up doing continuous, I was so fascinated. Do you remember we got really into that trip on trying to connect our thoughts and connect our creativity together and connect our imaginations together? And I was so into that idea when we would sit up late at night. We'd put a fire on sometimes, and we'd get the big piece of paper and we'd do continuous drawings together, or you just start working. And there was a creative thing that was going on with us that was so rewarding. And you contributed to the fledgling press, which I still have. We published our own little zine out of our apartment that I would use the DePaul copy machines to get free prints, and then I distribute them all over. Do you remember William Burroughs, editor, found one?
Yes.
And I got to go down and meet Burroughs, and all of us, people who were like, oh, I don't write. And I was like, well, but, and you did, and we did. So I'm glad that you have that memory. I think about that stuff often. In fact, I still have it. It's right in my filing cabinet right here, all those old fledgling presses. And I was thinking about those days. And it's hard when you're a survivor of near death addiction and depression, because it's easy to just go, that was that time. But we know that it wasn't, and it wouldn't have been what it was if it had. And there were even in the midst of that abject suffering, which came much later, by the way. It was really into the fourth year, and that year after I graduated, when the candle finally like caught up with itself, and then I just melted. But that stuff was so clutch, man. And like the improving group that we would do at Finley's, and like just playing together, Gina, like
I forgot all about that.
Crazy musicians come play like their bongos in our living room, and trying to like spontaneously create poetry. Who knows? Like, it was great.
We had a party one time, and it was so cold outside, and I guess maybe we had no heat, that we hung blankets like in front of our door to try to create warmth, and people came to our party and all they could do is sit down and be under jackets and blankets because it was like 20 degrees inside of that apartment.
I mean, we survived, and I think the resiliency factor, and I get, you've talked a little bit, each of you, about, maybe that you were in, was it Hoogs ROTC, and that you played sports. Where does resilience come from that you guys keep going? And sometimes it's spiritual, sometimes, but that I'm fascinated by resilience. So there are so many times in our lives where where all of us could have been like, you know what? Nope, bye. I'm not going to be an artist anymore. Or where does your resilience come from, do you think?
Stubbornness. It's super hard. And I look at my career and I think about how lucky I feel that I am, and grateful I am that I've been able to cobble it together and to make a living. But there are times when things are slow. And for me, so much of your sense of self-worth is tied to your ability to provide or contribute. But I think at the end of the day, it's seeing myself as an artist and as nothing else, and being stubborn to the extent that I'm not willing to let that go, in the way that I'm not willing to cut off my feet and try to learn to walk again. It's who I am. It's a part of me.
I feel the same. And I know John, expressed this, and John and Kelly met at such a young age, but when I met Eve, it was like, we're in for the ride. Then there's years where we're going to make $12,000. There's years where we're going to make $2 million. There's years we're going to make it's like, this is, and I'm grateful that I've got the partner who goes, of course. Or, John gets the call Monday, you have to go to, Quebec to shoot a movie for 2 months. And Kelly goes, okay, let's figure it out. Eve does the same for me. So I have an incredible partnership. I have the stubbornness, John and I have that shared kind of like, there's no way. I don't give it. If I got told 99 times no, I always believed in my heart that was getting me one step closer to the yes that I needed. And I always tried to look at every moment and opportunity and also I think the gratitude that for me personally, which is different than John, but having survived nearly dying and coming back, my when I got my life back, I said, God, I'm all I'm going to do for the rest of my life is smoke cigarettes and drink coffee. I promise. If I can have, and if I could just have an apartment and a TV and a VCR, and I worked like regular jobs for a couple of years. I mean, I knew John at that time when I wasn't even acting again. And
let me tell a story about you real quick,
please,
bro.
Because I'm going to start crying.
When Kelly and we had a lot of Dave's belongings. Like we had taken them on board when Dave crashed and had to go home to Kansas. Missouri? Kansas.
I was on the Kansas side, but I was right there at the,
Yeah. And we were going down there to see him, and we went and we took his stuff, and we only got to see him briefly, and he was beaten, but he still smiled. And the next time I think we got to see Dave was at Webster Place, and he was working at Webster Place. And what was your job you were doing there at that time?
The popcorn on aisle 5. I was Theater 5. Can you clean the popcorn spill in Theater 5? I was a DePaul Theater School graduate with a BFA in the polyester pants with the name tag. Grateful to be making $11 an hour. Yeah.
And guys, the energy and the positivity you see coming out of dude right now was the same when he was standing there with the little dustpan on the stick and the popcorn around his feet. Like that was all there right then. Such a powerful force, man.
Thanks, man. Thanks. Gratitude is just can't stop, and I'm so grateful for you guys. I'm John. I'm all three of you guys. Jen, you were there because you knew personally, outside of all the theater school stuff, my therapist and the counselor who helped me when I was in the mental hospital. Gina and I were there when I was a baby, and John put my diaper on and cleaned my little bottom and powdered it up for the big world. But no, gratitude is the best. It's such a great fuel for art, because even when we go to the darkest places and we have to, inhabit really nasty skins or really creepy characters that you think, how am I gonna find any love within this? I think for anybody to connect with them, love is it's so important, and it's such an important part of storytelling. And so for me, that gratitude, it's fuel. So thanks, guys. Mm-hmm. I'm grateful for today, for certain.
Boz, what did that? I know we have to go, but what did that bring up for you just now?
Just like the idea that when Gina and I talk about this a lot, about the fact that our shame, the things that we think are so shameful and so ugly, are the things that connect us to each other in such a deep way that if we can sort of not deny the fact that we're all connected in this way, especially having gone through the theater school and stuff, but even just human beings, that we can take the shame and turn it into something beautiful.
I totally agree.
It's a huge gift.
Amen.
Amen. Amen. To draw us closer, for sure.
Well,
thank you guys. This is the greatest thing. I'm like, wait, our podcast has to be, at first I was like, our podcast is just Dave and John. And then I'm like, okay, that can't be a podcast forever. But I mean, it could, but that's their own podcast. But
there's a whole other side of John and I that we didn't get to. We're starting a
what if there's like two artist friends?
We will have to have you back. We will have to do a part 2 and 3 and 4, but thank you so much.
Thank you guys.
This has been
so
fantastic.
Much. It's so wonderful. And everything that you're right. You said at the beginning, John, that like the stuff comes back. It comes back. Maybe it's 20 years later, maybe it's 30 years later, maybe it's 5 minutes. But the things that you two have clearly put out into the world are coming back to you in a way that it just makes you shine. And so shine on. That's all I have to say.
You shine on. Thank you so much, you guys, for allowing us to be here with you together. That's super, super cool.
Okay, thank you. Have a good day, everybody. Love you.
Bye.
I Survive Theater School is an Undeniable Inc. production. Jen Bosworth Ramirez and Gina Polici are the co-hosts. This episode was produced, edited, and sound mixed by Gina Polici. Follow us on Instagram at Undeniable Writers or on Twitter at Undeniable WRIT1. That's Undeniable Right without the E1. Thanks.